All right, so it is the end of the year, so we are going to do our best paddles of 2024. And I will say that this has been a roller coaster of a year for paddles. We're going to kind of take out stuff like the Ripple, stuff that's kind of not super clearly available in a public release yet for the masses. So. That aside, yeah. So do you want to start us off here?
Sure. Which category? So
Control.
we're going to do three categories, right? We're going
Yep.
to do all court, control, and the power, best power. And then we'll name the what we consider to be paddle
Yeah,
of
the
the year.
paddle of the year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
I'm doing three paddles each category is what I'm
we
doing.
get
So
top three in each one.
yeah.
And just a disclaimer, you may not agree with us, but these are our opinions.
It's our opinions.
That's right. So don't get mad if your paddle isn't part of these paddles, but these are, one that the rules where we had to be paddles that we used,
Yeah.
and then and then like Dawson said, it had to be in general availability. So that was kind of eliminated the Ripple, which we both like a lot. Um, but yeah, anyway, what do you want to start? All court, control. What do
Let's
you?
start control.
All right,
We'll
control.
work our way up
All right, so
like that. Yeah.
I'll run through my three, and then you can do yours. How's
All
that
right.
sound?
Sounds good.
So the number three control paddle for me is, and this might shock some people, is the Spartus Ballista. And I hesitated almost to name this one because honestly, I don't feel like Sparta's giving it the love. Spartus is giving it the love that it deserves. To me, this is a phenomenal control paddle. Um, just really soft, plush feel. The ball, if it goes where you want it to go. Not a ton of power, which it's a control paddle. But yeah, so I don't even know if they're selling these anymore. But this is I really, really enjoy this paddle. So for a control, if you're looking for a control paddle, and you can still find them, Spartus Ballista. That was number three. So I would say then my number two control paddle is the Pickleball Apes, the
Ooh,
V.
interesting.
Yep. This to me, I almost put it in the all court paddle category, but to me, it's plays really plush, good feel, good control. So I waffled. I was maybe going to put it in the all court paddle category, but I thought personally it played more of a control paddle for me, so that's why it's my number two control paddle. All right, now the number one control paddle for Jimmy Pickles in 2024 was the Honolulu JTI, J2TI. Um, this is a really nice control paddle. Very plush, um, the Kevlar on there. It's just, I don't know if that was the intent was to create it, but I found like with the Kevlar paddles, they tend to be a little more soft, a little more forgiving. Um, Really, really cool paddle. Good price point for these guys. Actually, all three of these are really good price point. Well, I forget what this one was, like 140, 150. Same with the pickleball apes, and then this thing was like $60 for the spars,
Wow.
which is another reason why I put it
Yeah.
in. Wait.
That's a
So
great deal
anyway,
right there. 60
yeah,
bucks.
yeah, that was crazy cheap. They were, they were coming out with a new one, but I don't see the new one on their website anymore. So it was like a V2. So anyway, those are mine. What do you got for
All
your
right.
control?
Let me move this over quick. My number three for control, and I will attest, it didn't technically come out in 2024, but it's still that good of a control paddle that I'm counting it for this, is the Vatic Prism. I've always gravitated to the V7 shape. There's a flash somewhere back there in the paddle area. Yeah, I feel like I can go to just about any level game, and as long as I'm not trying to just destroy someone with only driving the ball, I can play pickleball with this the way I want to play with it. It was my main a while back, and I usually toss it in the bag still. And if I'm struggling with whatever we're testing out, then I'll usually go to it. I still think this is one of the best deals in pickleball. It's $90 after a discount code for pretty much a great paddle that's control. And, if you put enough lead on it, I guess you could consider it all court. But I mean, yeah, I still think that's a great deal and a great control paddle. And I mean, look, Augie just won MLP playing with this thing literally as it is.
Yeah.
So, it does work for some pros. So, my number two is I don't actually have it on me because my time I spent with it was with yours as well as with a buddy of mine, but it's the Jelly Bean. And I do think that is the best deal. 11,624 Jelly Bean, sorry. I do think that is the best deal currently in pickleball. Um, David was pretty much given those things free almost during Black Friday. I think at one point they hit $35, $40 with the sale for a paddle that's nuts. That's less than shoes. Like,
Yeah. No, that's a nice
and
paddle.
so, and I think that's a great control paddle. A lot of people, these newer people, like coming into pickleball, I usually send them to the Vadix or I send them to the Jelly Bean because I'm like, look, you're getting a good paddle that's, control. And even, someone example, I have one of my first female mixed doubles partners, she loves control paddles. She loves like the soft game, all of that. And I recommended the Jelly Bean, and she absolutely loves it, and
Yeah.
she's a
Yeah.
good 4 or 5
It's,
player. And so, my number one though, and I still, I might have to start playing with this thing again at some point, is the Mach 2 Forza. I absolutely love this thing. This was my main for a lot of the year. Like, I only went away from this when we started getting the newer wide bodies and standards and all that. And this is still a great paddle. I think this is actually the one I taught most of the summer with and has ball dust on it still from the summer. So there you go. That's it for me for control. This one definitely is my top control for sure.
yeah.
But the other two aren't far off from that, I'd say. So
It's all good paddles. Yeah. I like the
yeah.
Volair too. I almost added that to the,
Yeah, I did do an honorable mention of one or two that didn't quite get the
yeah.
spot for me.
But
My other my
you
other
broke
one,
your
it's
rule.
discontinued now, was the Monarch control
Oh yeah,
for
those are
11,624. At least the 16 millimeter. That one was super soft to me, and it
yeah.
was very controllable. And I like that blue Kevlar face. I think it looks really nice and plays nice. And then this is one that not a lot of people are going to know of that I figured I wanted to give a mention of. The Delta Sport Meta. After the discount code, it's only $80 and it's an elongated control, which I think is a very niche category. So I thought that was cool as well. I just didn't think it was better than any of the other three I mentioned.
All
So,
right. Very cool. All
all
right.
right, let's
So,
do all court here.
okay, we'll do the all court. So, all court. My number three, all court. And this, frankly, I only just got it. So this would, I have a feeling if I had played with this more than just a couple hours, would might be my favorite paddle of the year. But it's the Gearbox Hyper
Wow. You have that as all court?
for all court. Yeah. Very,
I'm actually
very
so
um,
surprised.
great. Again, not a ton of play with it, but it hasn't broken in yet. So again, why I it would be higher, I think, in my list once I've gotten some more time with it. But boy, this is a nice all around paddle. Great touch right away at the net. Third shot drops, you know, almost dropping on their own. When you need that power, I mean, it's the gearbox with the SST core, right? So it's got the power. Yeah, so number three could possibly be way up there if we talk in a couple weeks, but for
Could
right now,
possibly be in power.
it might be
So,
in a couple weeks when it opens up.
yeah,
So
that
yeah,
or a
so
hammer.
that's my number three. Um, so my number two all court paddle is the Dynasty
Oh
Featherweight.
my goodness.
I love this paddle. This is a fantastic paddle. Great touch. It has a little bit, just good power, not
Hold
overpowering.
that thing up higher quick. Show them that little, yeah, there you go.
So you got it's got the throated smiley face on it, and
Yeah.
then these is cool. We're gonna do like a full review on these in probably beginning of the year, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, Dynasty, one they have really cool graphics, but this edgeless paddle plays really really nice all around. Just this is all court paddle for me, number two, featherweight. All right, and then my number one, so we have these in different categories, you and I, but my number one all court paddle is the Jelly Bean.
Wow.
This
Okay.
sucker, it's controllable, but it's also got plenty of pop and power when you need it because of that fiberglass layer. And like you said, you did practically give them away, and it's a fantastic
Yeah.
paddle. Um, yeah, I love this is a really really nice paddle. The 11.624 guys, what David's bringing to the market is something just really cool. And yeah, number one for me, all court paddle, the Jelly Bean. I like my jelly beans. So yeah, that was my all court number one.
Well, that certainly surprised me, some of those. So you definitely, I would not have guessed any of that. So,
There you go. They keep you on the edge of your
um,
seat.
yeah, that was impressive. And we did, to be clear, guys, we did not exchange notes before this on our lists. So, diving into all court for me, it's funny because if you asked me summertime all court, this would have been my number one, but just off of what's come out after it, I have it at the number three spot. Keeping the 11.624 theme, I have the Monarch all court, the 16 millimeter. Um, I love this thing. If I ever go back to a standard or wide body, it will probably be this, to be honest, because either that or that Pulse V. Just because I find they have great sweet spots and it's a great overall paddle that I can play, how I want to play with. Similar to the Jelly Bean, it comes in at a good price. Not as good as the Jelly Bean, but the big difference is it's just got the full, Gen 2 thermoform. Just hits a little harder than the Jelly Bean. Other than that, it's pretty much the same thing. So, yeah. So this is my number three. Big fan. One thing I will say too on this that I don't think enough people are talking about is the handle length on the Monarch. They're now the Pegasus series, technically, since he had to rebrand this because of Monarch Pickleball. But so technically on the Pegasus, it's a 5.75 handle. I just find this to be more comfortable than the 6-inch one on the Hirachis. So that also is another thing that makes me gravitate towards them. Diving into my number two, which very well could have been my number one had my number one not existed yet. And this is one that I know Jim still needs to snag off of me to hit at some point, is the Neonic Flare Prime X. I really like this. I pondered maining it earlier, in the fall, and I actually don't know why I didn't. It's a great paddle. There's really nothing wrong with it. The one thing I will say is it's a lot more of a poppier all court than it is like a plow through people kind of all court. So that's a little different. But you know, it comes in super light. It allows you to do a lot of customization with it, in kind of whatever area you want. I also think it looks amazing. Like, I just think this look is super clean. And yeah, I was a big fan of this, still am, and that's my number two. The other thing I will say too is I do like that this is 14 millimeter. I think that a lot of these new 14 millimeter paddles are getting very better per se than the old 14 millimeter was back in the day. So that's one thing I want to shout out. My number one, which is not going to surprise you probably, and it very well could be a power paddle too, is the Pulse S by Pickleball Apes. And I absolutely love this thing. I don't think I have a single bad thing I could say about this other than the break-in, which is a little funky, and I've been messaging with them about that to try and navigate what exactly that means per se with the paddle. But I can say this is that it doesn't get to a point where it's, too hard to control or anything like that. I think it's a great paddle. That's why I was so shocked that the V was in control for you. But, you know, for me, at least for the S, mine is broken in, my first one, and I have that all court leaning power for sure. And then real quick, I did want to do honorable mention or two for this one. The Delta XL by Alpha Sport. It's an aramid fiber Gen 2, so similar to this layup for the apes. It's just a little bit of a looser layup. I'm a big fan personally of this paddle facing material and layup, just on paddles in general. I find it's the most comfortable for me, and I thought that was a great all court paddle with a unique elongated shape with an arrow curve at the top. And then again, only this time the 14 millimeter, the Monarch Control that is now discontinued by 11/6/24. I really liked that 14 millimeter, man. Like I still have them, and
Yeah,
I
I have a couple too.
yeah, I was about to say we got a good amount of those, and like
Yeah.
I don't know, one of these days I might just lead one of them up and fly out there and see if I can hit it like a power paddle. So,
Why not?
um, but yeah, let's dive into power paddles here.
All right. So I had to make an audible here because you wouldn't let me use the ripple in this. So anyway, my number three power paddle, and this may surprise you too, the Apollo.
What?
This sucker, did you get to play with this?
I did, yes. I played with yours one time, and then I played with a buddy's of mine. She's using it currently, so I've hit hers a bunch.
I don't know if it just fits my swing, but I can hit like crazy hard with this. I almost put it more in the all court because it does have a nice kind of nice touch, but it actually the ball flies off of this thing. And I don't think it's delaminated.
No, I
Um,
haven't heard of Apollo's delaminating, so I
oh,
don't even think it might
well,
not
yeah,
be able
every paddle
to
can
be honest.
delaminate, but
Yeah, but I
um,
don't I don't think it's to the point where it gets hotter, is my point.
no, it
Yeah.
probably would die. It just have
Yeah,
like that
exactly.
broken polypropylene core in there. No, so yeah, I was like, to me this, it wasn't pitched as a power paddle, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's like top tier. That's why it's number three. But it's a definitely for me more of a power paddle. I got to kind of rein it in when I use it, um, because otherwise I'll be flying the balls out of bounds. But yeah, so that's my number uh three. My number two, and this I think actually like your first choice where you told me we couldn't use 2023 paddles, but is it's not so it's the pro this is the control, but the first paddle I had was the power, and that sucker's like crazy hard because it's 2023. It came out last fall, right? I was like, meh. So this was not in my original pile because it wasn't supposed to be for this year. So I had to literally 2 seconds ago pull a different paddle out because I didn't want to break D-Dog's law. Uh, but yeah, the gearbox that SST core, same core as um the Hyper, except Raphael he just kind of like he messes with the makeup of the carbon on the inside, the carbon fiber, the way how tight it's packed, tighter packed, more power. Anyway, so yeah, that's these are really cool paddles, very powerful paddles. If you've ever played against one, you probably have a couple of Franklin welts on your face, your body, because they hit really hard. And so again, the Ripple was going to be my number one, and this was going to be my number two. But um, this is a really cool paddle.
Wow.
Um, 18 millimeter. The Body Helix Pro X3. So, yeah, I had to get this because there was a warning almost on the website that said, this paddle is only for advanced players. If you're not at least a 4 or 5, don't even touch it. So, but I find that this paddle plays really when you need that power, it's there. But I also feel like again, this is another one I might have put in the all court category. I don't think you've hit it yet, no?
No,
Um,
I haven't hit that yet.
But the first time I played with it was last Friday night, I think it was, and I didn't want to put it down, and I used it pretty much like Saturday almost the whole time, except I was uh, also testing the other ones, the flamingo pickleball.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, this is a really, 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 really nice paddle and a very powerful paddle when you need it. They have, I think they call it small pocket core, so it's a very tight, dense core, and that's why it's everybody who's reviewed it said it was it's so hard to control because it's so poppy and it flies off the face. I didn't find it was uncontrollable, but boy, when you needed that little extra pop, I think there was a couple on that first game, D-Dog, where I came flying across the middle and you'd have,
Yeah.
I don't even think you saw the ball. It came so hard off the paddle. So
I gotta pull that footage at some point for my
yeah, so
gameplay update for us. But
so
yeah,
there you go.
that's a that's a great list. I really like it. Darn, I kind of like your list more than mine now. Virgin Power.
Yeah,
That was a really good power list, and I love the number one pick too. Yeah, and it's funny because like no one's talking about that body helix paddle right now,
I
and
don't know
so
why.
I
I
think
think
it's a
it's
great paddle from what
fantastic.
I've
Yeah,
heard. I'm looking forward
yeah,
to giving it some hits. But yeah, so I'll dive into mine here. So my number three, which honestly I was gonna put higher at first, but after I hit these other ones more extensively, I couldn't, is the Dynasty middleweight, the Joker face, the 14 millimeter.
yeah.
This is still to the day my favorite Dynasty paddle. We're currently testing the newer versions of these. And so, we've got a lot of time with a lot of the Dynasty paddles. And for me, I just find this thing is a driving machine and it does the power game well. The pop is great. You can still kind of do the all court game with it. I guess in today's paddle meta, if we were including some of these, top tier borderline illegal paddles, it might not be at that heat, but it's probably the heat below it. I like it. I like that it's a unique shape too. I'll see if my camera will pick this up. Yeah, so it's not like a standard or wide body, but it's not far from it. As a hybrid here, I'll use the Pulse as an example here. So you can kind of see here. Yeah, they kind of line up. Like, see how the corners flare out a little more on the bottom? So it
Yeah.
makes it feel kind of like a standard as well when you're hitting it. You do lose a touch of reach, but it's not really noticeable enough, at least for me, that it was an issue. And I think the thing hits hard, and I've been a fan. And so I think the unique shape is what makes it stand out for sure. Um, I don't know if Scott at Dynasty is pricing those differently, but I think that one was like 180, 190 range after code. So not terrible for a power
Yeah.
paddle in today's meta. My number two, I don't have on me because I've spent a lot of time with a couple of my friends that are ambassador of this brand's paddle, but is the Paddletech TKOC 14.3 millimeter. The elongated one, not the wide body. I'm sorry, not the standard wide body ones. I love these things. I know we got our brief session with them together as well. I got a little more time on a couple of them. And honestly, if they weren't 200 something dollars, they'd probably be my number one. And so I just don't think that that price is justifiable. But I think, right below that at like the 180, 190, those paddles would sell even more than they do now already. And I think they're great paddles. I think it's really cool that they're Gen 1 and they hit this hard and they don't necessarily crush in a way that the Gen 2s and 3s are. I also think that, you know, you got a great brand behind you in Paddletech, being, one of the more legacy brands. And so I was actually super excited when we did get to hit these. Yeah, I think just those reasons alone, as well as it being just a good paddle and offered in a variety of unique millimeters, which I also think it's really cool that they have a 12 millimeter and because not a lot of people have that. And so yeah, that's my number two. Then my number one that I also don't have on me, and you're going to be surprised by this that I've hit this that much because I normally did not like the older version of this, but the Gearbox Pro Ultimate, the 16 millimeter, the elongated, and I think that currently, I think that currently is, at least for me, the top power paddle on the market right now. Jim's little funky look there is because I normally hate the gearbox paddles, like playing them. I have never really played well with them. And so Jim knowing me knows that. But I got a good amount of time on a couple of pro ultimates from a few of our friends and I would excluding the paddles that we're excluding, I think that's my top for now, for power. And I do think that, I'll be curious once we see your hyper break in how that does compared to that. But I do think that also has a break in as well because I hit one that sounded very different than the other. I'll put it like that. So we'll call it an honorable mention just because we've both mentioned it now. But the Ripple, I think if we were allowed, we probably both would have chose that. So as our number ones, for me, it was the R2 shape. But the R1 as well is definitely up there for me. And then I did exclude it, but it is still technically the hardest hitting paddle right now. The Pro Power elongated by Gearbox, the 14 millimeter. So that could be there as well. But I don't know, man. That experience we had with your elongated just turned me off on that completely. So
It was, it,
like
yeah,
it's
yeah, it
great
was,
you can hit hard, but if the ball's in the curtain, what does it matter?
yeah,
Like
that's why I traded
anyways,
in.
let's dive into paddle of the year here.
Paddle
So
of the year. All
yeah.
right. So paddle of the year. So just to let you know, so when I was doing all this, right? So I was taking into account the playability of the paddle, um, the all around feel, all that. And I took into account price points, things like that, right? So
Hmm.
for me, price, fantastic play, just a great paddle to me, paddle of the year, and it's the Jelly Bean, a
Wow.
Jelly Bean.
Okay.
I'm telling you, with the discount code, probably not as good as it was on Black Friday, but I think it's $80, $89.
It's
Um,
still an incredible deal.
yeah, I mean, this for the money, the way this sucker plays, this is easily the paddle of the year. To me, it's like, you know, I don't know. If I was buying paddles, I would be buying this one because this is a really, really, really cool paddle. I tried your doll court you have, which is supposedly the same makeup, but with the unibody design, uniform. Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's single body.
It's just Gen 2 instead of
Yeah. So
1.5.
the
It's a
only difference is just the handles separate.
I think it hits a little harder too, but yeah, other than that, there's no
Yeah,
real
but you know what I'm
difference.
saying? Like as far as like the basic.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so for me, pal of the year, congratulations, David, and all you whoever works for 11/6/24. I don't even hate your name anymore because the paddle's that good. So, yeah, there you go. Paddle of the year. You heard it here from Jimmy Pickles.
I think that's a great selection. Like you said, I still think that is currently the best deal in pickleball for sure. And I think from that standpoint alone, that totally justifies a paddle of the year right there.
Yeah, it's a great paddle.
I did factor those in for mine, but mine does cost a little more than that in my defense. Um, I do still think that is a great paddle, and I do think that's a paddle that'll be in the hands of a lot of people for a lot of time to come. Um, my paddle of the year currently is the Pulse S. Also, the Pulse V. I just prefer the S personally. I did go back and I got a little more time with the V after I dropped yours off to you. And yeah, I absolutely love that thing. Just everything about that makeup fits what I like in a paddle from the face. In particular, this is something they're not talking enough about as well. But this weave is a lot tighter than all of the other aramid fiber weave paddles currently. And so I think that is also a huge improvement for them because those things have a lot more spin than the older generations of them did. And I don't think that's because of the added power. I think it's because of the improved facing material and core, as well as I just think the sweet spot on them is great. I think they're super plush. I like that it's a Gen 3 that isn't like this crazy bazooka like the other Gen 3s are. I think that it fits all of, the paddle trends of this year, being that a lot of them were Kevlar, Gen 3, foam in the paddle. It fits all of those. It comes in three shapes. The one thing I would like to see in 2025 is it coming in different millimeters. That's one thing that they haven't done yet. It's technically 16 and a half millimeter. I did measure this because I was curious if the half mattered. It's just a little thicker than the 16s. It's like almost a 17 millimeter. But um, yeah, I mean, I really liked that. I still have it as all court leaning power, even with the broken in one. And for me personally, I just think I'm an all court paddle guy. Um, but yeah, so that's my paddle of the year. Yeah, I'm actually so shocked at your lists. Like, I don't think I could have guessed some of them. I don't think I could have guessed all of them though, by any means. So,
No, no. I was like, yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I likes what I likes. So,
Yeah, I feel like you probably knew that that was my paddle of the year. And
oh
so,
yeah, no, I knew you liked
yeah.
the eights a lot. So I
Yeah.
like the eights. I mean, I do. I like the V. It's a nice paddle. It's plays really
Yeah.
well. It's yeah,
So,
I actually some of these had been so long, because we've had so many paddles like
yeah.
just to play with lately that I was like, oh well, I almost forgot about that one. But yeah, so no, that was cool. Those were yeah, yeah, I liked your list. You had good stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, good. There you go. So look at that. We're like completely different in all of our. Like, I
I
don't think we
know.
have any
That's
that.
crazy.
I mean, we both liked the jelly bean. That was about it. So, um,
Well,
but a couple other ones,
yeah.
but for the most part.
Yeah.
So, all
So,
right. So there you go. So this might be what the end of our last one for 2024, maybe.
I think this is our last video for 2024.
Well,
I
look
think
at that.
so. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
a whole year gone. Well,
I know.
and there's more to come.
Crazy.
All
So,
right. Well, that was good stuff.
all right, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, everybody.